Thank you for tuning in to the one and only Track and Field Bleacher Report. I'm your official host here, the Track Head, coming to you with a recap of the women's NCAA Division I Week 6 track and field action. So the women were back on the track and out in the field this past weekend. It's the first weekend in January. A few of the teams are competing for the very first time. Some of the teams are coming back after competing in the first couple of weeks of December. But the women are back in action, and I'm very excited. In the women's 60, LSU had a meet at home. It was a small meet, but they primarily focused on their short sprints, and we'll just jump into it. LSU, I talked about them in the women's sprints preview for the 60, 100, and the 200 meters. They were mentioned a lot in that video, and so they're already showing at home this past weekend that they're ready. In the women's 60, Aleia Hobbs from LSU, she ran 7:24, which is a pretty good time for a season opener. Also, Kortnei Johnson from LSU ran 7:29 in that same race. Rachel Meisher, I didn't mention her in my preview videos at any of the events, but she's a junior at LSU, so Rachel Meisher has been a part of LSU's team for the last 3 years. She's run primarily the 400, the 200 sometimes, but she's opened up this past weekend in the 60. She ran 7:33, which is a pretty impressive PR for her. So Rachel Meisher, she might be one to look out for in the shorter sprints this year. They might be trying to focus her more on the shorter sprints and see if they can add her to maybe the 4x1 relay come outdoors. So we'll keep an eye out for Rachel Meisher. I talked about Cassandra Hall. Cassandra Hall also ran in this past weekend at LSU. She ran 7:39 in the 60. So LSU girls, they had four girls that ran under 7:40 in the 60, and also Mikiah Briscoe didn't even run the open 60. So if you add her in the mix, they already showing that they have a good 5 or 6 girls that's ready to rock and roll this coming season. At the Clemson Orange and Purple meet, Kate Hall from Georgia in the 60, she ran 7:32. She won the meet at the Clemson Orange and Purple meet. So Kate Hall out of Georgia, she ran 7:32, which is good. Another good season opener for her. Tori Robinson from Clemson, she ran 7:36, and also Rebecca Smith from Clemson at home, she ran 7:37. So the women's 60 between those two meets, those were the top times that came out of the weekend between those two meets. Nowhere else anyone really broke under 7:40. So most of the women's 60 heavy hitters outside of the LSU girls haven't opened up this season, so we'll keep an eye out for the next couple of weeks when the rest of the schools like USC and Oregon, Texas, Texas A&M, when they start really Texas A&M already have opened up, but when the rest of the schools, San Diego State and those teams like that open up and drop some times in the women's 60, we'll have more to talk about coming up in the next few weeks. The women's 200, actually, there's not a lot going on. Just like the men's 200, there's not really a lot going on in the women's 200 so far this early in the season. Usually, by the end of January, that's when the times really start rolling in for the women's 200. But already this past weekend, Shania Collins from the University of Tennessee, she ran an indoor PR of 23:45 this past weekend. So that's a good mark for her. Shania Collins, she was previously at University of Texas a couple of years ago. Then she transferred to the University of Tennessee last year and started to make some improvements in her times. And so she looks like she's building off of that and coming into this season ready to rock and roll. The women's 300-meter dash, again, just like the men's, this is probably the last weekend for the collegiates that they're really running the women's 300 like that. They'll have to start focusing on the 200 or the 400 once the season goes on so they can qualify for their individual events there. But at the Clemson meet, we had the freshman. I mentioned the freshman as an impact freshman, Lynna Irby from the University of Georgia. She ran a PR of 36:73 in her very first meet, her season debut. Her collegiate debut for the University of Georgia. She ran a really good 300-meter dash time of 36:73, which is off of Sydney McLaughlin's mark that she ran 36:12, but it's a very impressive time for Lynna Irby. I was really curious to see how she would do coming into Georgia, and it looks like she's ready to rock and roll. And it looks like she, by that time she might be able to run an impressive 200, or she's probably a better 400 meter runner. But it shows that she's ready to rock and roll. So I mentioned her in the impact freshmen for the women's 400 this coming season, and it looks like she might be she will definitely be a contender in the impact freshman for the women's events, whether it be the women's 400 or the women's 200. Based on this 300 meter time, it looks like she can go either direction. So we'll keep an eye out for Lynna Irby. Good job, Lynna Irby, this past weekend. Taylor Manson from Florida, she's a freshman. She ran 37.92 at the Clemson meet in the women's 300. So we'll keep an eye out for her as well. She's a freshman at Florida. I didn't mention her, but we'll keep an eye out to see where she goes. We'll see how that 37.92 translates, whether that translates well for the 200 or whether that translates well for the 400. But she's just a freshman, so we'll see how that goes. But she had a pretty good, solid opener for Florida at the Clemson meet this past weekend. Just like the men's, there's not a lot of mid-distance and distance actions going on for the women on the women's side. So, of course, within the next few weeks, by the end of January, the beginning of February, that's when most of the mid-distance marks and the distance marks will start to come out. So, we won't report on that this coming recap. We won't report on that in this recap. But I'll jump to the women's 60-meter hurdles. At the LSU meet, the Lady Tigers at home, they put on a hurdle showcase, so to speak. Tonea Marshall, from LSU, she ran 8:14. So that's her season's best. I mean, that's her collegiate best. Out of high school, she actually ran 8:02, but she didn't get that mark in her freshman year at LSU. So this is a collegiate best for her. So she looks like she's getting back to where she was at coming out of high school. She's a sophomore now, so this is her second season at LSU. So we'll definitely keep an eye on her. We have to add her to the hurdles mix. I didn't talk about her as a dark horse in my women's hurdles preview, but we'll have to add Kortnei Marshall as a dark horse to the women's 60-meter hurdles, which is already, the list was this long, it was already deep, but we'll have to add Tonea Marshall there. Again, the U.S. hurdlers are always, continuing to produce really good times. Mikiah Briscoe ran the 60-meter hurdles at home this past weekend. She ran 8:20, which is a decent opener for her. Also, Brittany Humphrey from LSU, she ran 8:33. Milan Young, who's a freshman, she ran 8:34. And Jurnee Woodward, who's also a freshman, ran 8:39. So those were pretty good opening marks for the two freshmen in Milan Young and Jurnee Woodward at LSU. So LSU is very deep. There's five athletes that ran in the hurdles. So they have a very good talented hurdle squad and sprint squad, as I mentioned in the women's 60 sprint review. So LSU had a good meet at home. At the Clemson meet this past weekend, Janine Williams from Georgia Tech, she ran a PR of 8:20 in the women's 60 hurdles. Also, Madeline Akabundu from North Carolina A&T ran 8:26, which is a PR from her. And Tar Davis, the freshman that I mentioned, the super freshman that I mentioned in my Impact Freshman videos from the University of Georgia, she ran 8:28, so she had her collegiate debut and ran 8:28, which is a pretty good time for her, so she looks like she's ready to rock and roll too. Louisa Gravogel from Georgia, she ran 8:31. She's a sophomore at Georgia, so those were some of the good times that happened at the Clemson meet this past weekend in the women's 60-meter hurdles. Getting to the women's field event action in the long jump. At the Clemson meet, we had some pretty good times from the University of Georgia, which is like the women's jump university. Kate Hall from Georgia, she jumped 6.64 meters, which converts to 21 feet, 9.5 inches. Keturah Orji from Georgia, she jumped 6.45 meters, which is 21 feet, 2 inches. Tara Davis from Georgia, she had her jumping debut for the University of Georgia this past weekend at the Clemson meet. She jumped 6.43, which is 21 feet, 1 1/4 inch. So the Georgia women, they seem like they're gonna probably have a really good stranglehold on the long jump this coming season and at national. So Georgia women are look up to rack up some points in the long jump. So again, it wasn't a lot of action going on this past weekend. Most of the teams haven't opened up, but you know, we had a report on it. It was some good marks that was put out, so I didn't want to miss that. So I wanted to report on it. I wanted to make sure that I was here and, you know, giving you a video, giving you a little bit of rundown of what happened. It's not a lot going on, but again, it was some good marks. And so if you want to stay tuned to what comes up next in the next few weeks, if you want to be here, make sure that you subscribe, or you can comment and you can like. You can stay tuned for my up and coming videos. So thank you for tuning in to the Track and Field Bleacher Report. I'm your host here, the Track Head, saying thank you. Please like, comment, and subscribe to this video if you want to see more. And we will be back on track and back on the field in the next week with a lot more schools opening up on the men's and women's side. So we'll be here. I'll be reporting on it. Hope you'll be watching. Thank you.